Yeah, I think the problem with M&A deal flow is the traditional way still works, right? You can get books in from bankers. I mean, everyone's good at it. You say so. The hard part is not grinding through and developing these relationships. Still gets deals done. The returns will be lower, and we've seen that over time. So I think you need to try and be systematic in your approach to developing relationships with executive as opposed to be episodic. I can give you an example where a firm calls up and says, hey, we're thinking about, a fire and life safety business. So we're thinking about buying, right? So they call us up and say, all right, Scott, you guys have done this before. Who in your network, in your Rolodex really knows this industry? We introduce them to executives to help shape the investment thesis and to determine if the asset is of interest. If it is, well, lovely. Now they've got an angle and someone can join the board. And if it's not, then we use those executives and say, all right, we all decided not to buy this company for all the reasons you don't buy a company. What do you think are good assets out there, executive? You spent X amount of years burning calories in this space. What do you wish you know then that you know now? And harnessing that insight to develop a thesis and then attaching real companies to that thesis. We find that most executives say, listen, I don't want $300 to go teach a younger investment professional how to get smart in a particular subsector. I want equity. I want to join a board. I want something that's going to be, millions of dollars in compensation because of the equity, not hundreds of dollars. And so there is no, absolute guarantee because the PE firm may not buy the asset. But once a PE firm sees why the executive is helpful, then they can join the board, or maybe they want to run it, or maybe they just want to get equity. Or it's very flexible where for the executive, allowing them to lean in as deep or as shallow as they want to. You obviously can't join a board of a competitor or if something is too close, right? That's a non-starter. But if you're in an industry, let's say you're a multi-site healthcare CEO, for example, and we're working on a multi-site manufacturing business, right? And that's something that you did in your prior life before this asset that you're running. But 80% of the time, it's okay for them to join a board because it's not conflicting and allows them to be a better executive in their current role because they're getting insights from another role by being on the board. So, it depends, because sometimes someone will say, no, I don't want you to be on another board. I want you to be 100% focused on what you're doing today for me in this role. It's a nice way for that executive to pat themselves in the back and say to their board or whoever, hey, listen, someone asked me to join an outside board. It's not conflicting. Is that okay? Worst case scenario, that executive is getting to know a number of PE firms, and conversely, the PE firm is getting to know a bunch of executives, because everything by definition that's owned by a PE firm is coming for sale. So if that executive is not ready today, they may be ready in 6 months or a year or whatever it is. So this whole process fixes a grand term, but tries to alleviate the timing imbalance of PE firm has a need now, and maybe the executive's not ready, or the executive has sold an asset, but the PE firm doesn't have an opportunity to hire them one of their portcos. This idea around deal angles allows these two, if the timing is misaligned, allows them to talk about things that are real and current, and builds deeper connectivity between the executives and the PE firm. That's a very different conversation than someone like me in my former life as a banker or a PE professional calling them saying, hey, you want to sell? And that family member says, or the owner's like, oh, it just feels sort of rude or, not collaborative, right? Even if you're using a buy-side shop. But when you have an executive making that call and you're talking executive to executive, and they can say, listen, I had the opportunity to work with hundreds of PE firms. Here's why I chose this PE firm. Here's why they're the anti-private equity firm, if you will. And here's our plan. Here's how you fit into it. Come join me. It's very meaningful. So and the returns that we get, because we co-invest in all these deals, they're in the top quartile, because an executive who's smart is saying this plan doesn't work or does work, and they're more operationally savvy about how to get things done, as opposed to someone like me who tries to find salvation in Excel historically, and that's a tough putt. So having the operational insight is absolutely wonderful as you're trying to craft a differentiated way to get deals done.